Welcome to the Two Grumpy Bastards podcast, where feelings aren't felt and snowflakes melt. Buckle up, it's gonna be a bumpy ride.
These confines with a monarch's voice cry havoc! Let slip the dogs of war. Brings to my city steps. You insult my queen. You threaten my people with slavery and death. Oh, I've chosen my words carefully, Persian. Perhaps you should have done the same. This is blasphemy. This is madness. Madness. This is Sparta!
They painted over ants.
I've realized that any time somebody tells me to do something, I'm going to say, fuck off.
All right.
Nice 80s.
There we go. All right. I scratch. I can edit this out. Edit. All right. Hey, folks, welcome to the Two Grumpy Bastards podcast, where you got Sleepy Coop and my buddy Russ out there in the wilds of Tennessee. How you doing, Russ?
Good. I'm not sleepy.
Yeah, for some reason I am today. I don't know what happened. I've been under the weather, and Russ and I were supposed to catch up about an hour ago, and saw the text, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm never late for anything ever." So a little terrified. So here I am. Yeah, here I am, looking like a good old January 6th looking motherfucker right now. So that's where I'm at. There's a lot to talk about, Russ. We'll get right into it. I don't have any great videos, although I will be splicing some videos into the YouTube edition of our podcast. We have two separate media here, folks. We've got the podcast here, and then we do a YouTube video where we try to keep it a little bit tamer, and yeah, so far that hasn't worked out so well.
Oh, it has not.
It has not. YouTube tells me that we're not platformed every single time I try to put a YouTube video up because of either our language or our subjects or any of that kind of thing. You know, Russ, you can't be anything other than a lamb these days and get by on YouTube. You can't even say things like, well, hey, everybody, this is Coop, the handsome and debonair one of the Two Grumpy Bastards podcast. Not to mention I'm the only one that's an actual bastard. Google that shit. Don't, actually. Hey, I'm here to do a shameless plug for our merchandise. You can find us at twogrumpybastardsmerchandise.com. We got a whole bunch of new merchandise in. I think you'll like some of the new choices. There's some pro-Second Amendment. There's some anti-Washington State Governor stuff on there. I think you'll really appreciate it. New stuff coming all the time. I have two great designs in the works, so please, to support this podcast, that's one of the easiest ways to do it. We're also on Etsy. Yeah, I know, Etsy. You can find our products on eBay as well. Storm King Mercantile is the name of the store there that fronts us. And there's many, many other ways to support this podcast, of course. We have a Patreon page, same thing, Two Grumpy Bastards. We certainly would appreciate you following us on Instagram. Most of you probably know we have a Facebook page, Two Grumpy Bastards Podcast. We have a lot of fun over there, a lot of frivolity, a lot of memes, and a lot of hard-hitting news, believe it or not. A lot of great people in that group. Also, all of the social media outlets, including now on TikTok. You can find us there. And one of the things that I really wanted to tell you is if you have any feedback for Russ, especially because he kind of sucks, feel free to email us at twogrumpybastards@gmail.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of us, or you can always leave us a comment or an IM on, or DM, I should say. See, I'm so savvy. On our Facebook page. So we really appreciate you listening or watching us over there on YouTube as well. And we hope you do both, because Russ is something to look at. I said something. I didn't say something really great to look at. Anyway, thanks for listening. This is your intrepid, amazing, and grateful host of the Two Grumpy Bastards podcast, Coop. Remember, keep your focus and stay wokeless.
Fucking donkey balls.
Defund the police. You can't say that because that means that you're one of us conspiracy theory type of people or any of that kind of thing. So what do we got going on this week, Russ?
Got a few things. We had a wonderful Super Bowl parade that turned into a shooting event because two teenage thugs decided that they wanted to get mad at each other.
Oh, I hear that's the Republicans' fault though.
And everyone on X is saying that. By the way, for those who don't know, I'm trying to ration my time on X to like 10, 15 minutes a day. I get sucked in and I end up feeling like shit while I'm on X on our stuff. But there's a lot of, the reason I feel like there's a lot of really stupid people out there, a lot of really stupid emotional people. I'm kind of shielded from it on Facebook because it's just not as prevalent. But yeah, a lot of people blaming Missouri governor and Missouri attorney general because two thugs decided to shoot up some folks. It was funny how they were calling for more gun control before they even knew what was going on. It's almost as if they, have a political agenda or something.
Let me address this because there's a couple of people that we follow. You're late to the game on the X thing because I asked you to kind of take it over, and I get on there
Got
too.
a lot of followers since I've joined.
Yeah. No, we're doing better, but there's a lot of people on there that I follow just out of sheer curiosity, like that fake OER comment. I would follow this leader out of sheer curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
I follow a lot of leftists on there just because out of sheer curiosity. And there was a guy on there. I meant to remember his name. It's not important because they're all fucking babies. They're all lambs waiting for their time at the slaughter. And it's like vote Democrat, vote Democrat, vote Democrat, vote all Republicans out, vote all Republicans out. And I pitched it that, so who the hell, if you vote all Republicans out, who's going to be adult enough to make any decisions ever? and that's actually the sad truth is vote Democrat, vote Democrat, vote Democrat. When in any city, state that has a super majority of Democrats, shit goes downhill very, very, very quickly. And even my normal, and that's in quotation for those of you folks that can't see that, Democrat friends will admit that, yeah, that does happen. Because they're like putting a retarded fucking ADH kid in a fucking candy store with the key to the candy store. They cannot make a good decision. They can't. Well, they run around just like going, ooh, and throwing all the goddamn candy in their basket and eating it all and going into a comatose fucking, ridiculous type of state. And that's the problem with the Democrats is they don't get that. Vote all the Republicans out, then who's going to be an adult? Who's going to be an adult and actually make a decision?
Well, I don't know if you saw the latest retardation coming out of California. They had a Senate debate recently between Barbara Lee, Adam Schiff, and the rest of the tiny little dwarves that want to be part of the U.S. Senate. And Barbara Lee said something that we used to joke about, that no one ever thought Democrats would actually be stupid enough, because whenever the minimum wage is brought up and folks want to get it to $15 an hour, we usually say, well, why not such and such? Well, Barbara Lee actually proposed a $50 an hour minimum wage.
I saw that.
Yeah, because it costs a lot of money to live in California, and I'm like, see, so you raise the minimum wage to $50, you don't think everything else is gonna go up too? Yeah, I'm like, shit. I mean, I would bag groceries for $50 an hour.
I gotta tell you, I quit being retired for $50 an hour.
Yeah,
it's a lot more. That's a lot more than I make being retired. I'll tell you what. That's $400 a day on an. Well, yeah, that's not bad. $50 an hour. Fuck yeah, I'd quit being retired in a heartbeat for that.
And then I don't know if you saw Gavin Newsom on X. Some of his stuff is just the stupidest stuff. But he tried to chastise Missouri for its level of gun violence. So I'm like, you see, you got Oakland and LA and the Bloods and Crips and the what is it, Nortos, whatever.
Soreños and
Yeah,
norteños and yes, yeah.
and I'm like, you're chastising others about gun violence. Don't you have like a bevy of these laws on the books in California? How's that working out for you?
Yeah, and it's funny that that dirtbag that I was talking about earlier, who was like, it's the Republicans' fault. I'm like, so a bunch of Republicans showed up at the Kansas City Chiefs parade and told people to pull triggers on people. I'm kind of curious how culpability works in these people's minds. What's culpability? And let me think. You're the fuckers who keep preaching against cops and law enforcement and the district attorneys that say, oh well, we're not going to enforce these laws, or when people do get victim of these laws. Do you know, did you hear and I know you got a point to make here, but we'll parlay this here in a second too. Hopefully you can pick this up. That like the whole thing about the technology about what gunshots are coming for is now racist. Did you hear about that one?
No.
Yeah, go ahead, make your point, and we'll talk about that.
Well, first of all, a lot of the dumbasses on Twitter or X or whatever the hell we're calling it, is they were saying, well, look, there were still gunshots fired and somebody died, even though there were 800 cops around. So it's not about the good guys with a gun. And I'm thinking, if the cops had pulled out a gun and shot those thugs, you want to bet that some, crusading activist would have demanded that the cops go to jail for actually defending people and that kind of stuff. So, it's funny. They try to use these gotcha points, which are not gotcha points, since there's no way in hell they'd actually be fine with the solution.
Right.
So that was it. I saw that on a couple of threads, and I'm like, look, I can't say this plainly enough, folks. You want my gun? Come try and take it. I promise you a welcome that your next of kin will never forget. It's just not. It's just not going to happen, folks. You're not going to get it, and so you need to stop trying. How about we enforce some of the 20,000 gun law we have on the books? As I pointed out on Facebook, last year over almost 46,000 known felons tried to buy guns. That's a felony. If you are ineligible to buy a gun, you know how many were prosecuted? About 45. Not 45,000, 45. So enforce what we've got on the books before you start shrieking for new laws, because it just shows you're not serious, and you all want to go out and grab everything because it's about control. I'm sorry, I don't trust the government, that far. Is anything going to happen today? No. Is anything going to happen tomorrow? Probably not. But it could at some point. And as I've often said in the past, and I know this may sound, bad to some folks, but armed people do not willingly load themselves into boxcars for shipment to Auschwitz. It just doesn't happen. If you come after me for that, I at least want a fighting chance. And that the history of the world, anybody who trusts government to not go tyrannical, especially if it's not watched closely, are fools. History is pretty conclusive in this regard. Now, that doesn't mean anybody's itching for it, but you put preventative measures in place so that they never itch for it.
And that's the entire intent of the Second Amendment for people that don't know. It's like, well, anything beyond hunt. Stop. It's always been about preventing tyranny. Always been about preventing tyranny. And you and I, having served a combined like damn near 60 years in the United States military, we know something about the capabilities of the United States Army, at least, and the Department of Defense. And I can tell you what, I would not want to be on the other side, on the uniform side of that, if the military was ever given the decree to subdue America.
Yeah, I don't think that would. Yeah, well, I've given you my equation for where I think that would go.
Yeah.
One last point on this. Lots of folks look at the Second Amendment, see militia. They think military. That's not what the militia is. The militia is the armed citizenry of the populace during the Revolution, during the War of 1812, during parts of the Civil War. If they didn't have enough troops, they went down the road, grabbed Farmer Bob. Farmer Bob took his rifle off the mantelpiece, fired 2 or 3 shots for God and country, and went home. That was the whole point, was to arm the civilian populace. And when it says well-regulated, what that meant was they knew how to use them. All right. Besides which, that's also the prefatory clause, not the clause of action, which says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I had somebody once try and prop up the really, it sounds great on the surface, but when you actually dig into it, really stupid suggestion about, well, if you're on the no-fly list, you should be denied the ability to buy a gun. And I said, absolutely not. They said, well, why not? I said, well, first of all, it's an administrative list without any legislative or judicial oversight. There's no way to know you're on it until you try to fly. There's no appeals process to get off of it. And in our country, you are only supposed to lose a constitutionally protected right through due process. If you got enough to deny me a constitutionally guaranteed right, then you got enough to drag me into court and charge me with a crime. Until then, I'm not going to deal with the same government that puts 10-year-olds on this list because they have a name that's similar to some IRA terrorist. That's just not the way it works. If I've done something that is supposed to deny me a right, then take me to court, put me through due process. Otherwise, no, some DC bureaucrat coming up with a no-fly list that can put anybody on it without checking or finding a way to get off of it. I'm not playing that game.
And people don't realize how stringent that actually the federal law is about that. For instance, convicted felons cannot own firearms without, it's like 10 years and you have to go to court. Now, this includes people that are guilty of things like tax evasion.
Or you're writing a bad check.
I'm not sure what that has to do with owning a firearm. If you're, Wesley Snipes, who paid tens of $millions worth of taxes, went to prison for tax evasion, and he had to wait 10 years and get a high-powered lawyer to get his gun rights back. I'm not sure that makes sense. That blanket idea of you're a felon, you can never have a gun again. That's kind of insane if you think about it. For non-violent and non-sexual crimes, you're still going to get your gun rights taken away from you.
I could see some kind of appeals process to eventually get them back, as long as it's a non-violent offense. I don't know if you saw what happened in a state that I used to be stationed in, Hawaii, last week, that declared that the Second Amendment doesn't apply in Hawaii because it's against the spirit of aloha. I've read my Constitution front to back. Not familiar with the words "the spirit of aloha" being part of the U.S. Constitution.
Aloha. Can you imagine Thomas Jefferson spirit of aloha shall be the exception?
Yeah, and one part of the Constitution I am familiar with is the Federal Supremacy Clause, which says that federal law trumps state law and state decisions. So what I imagine is, as soon as that came out, the U.S. Supreme Court rolled its eyes and they're like, we're going to have to go in and overturn another one of these. The reason these state legislatures and state courts keep doing this is they're hoping that the Supreme Court's going to get tired of having to constantly take up these cases.
Right.
It's just stupid. I was in Hawaii. They have very stringent gun laws. And it really gave me an appreciation for my rights. And ever since Bruin v. New York, they're not supposed to be doing this, but they keep trying, hoping that people are going to tire or the Supreme Court's not going to have enough time to take up these cases. And it makes me wonder at their motives.
Well, I don't think there's any wonder at the motives at all at this point. If you look at every single thing that's happened under this leftist presidential term, and you can call it what you want out there, folks. You can say that this is the rebuttal to the conservative movement, or you can say this is the woke revolution happening, or this is the anti-Trump folks. Everything that's been happening in the last 10 years, in my opinion. And I was looking back at this interestingly earlier, Russ, before I took a nap and fell asleep and overslept our date for getting on here, is that I think the woke movement has really been loud and proud since about 2012. That's about where since
the Obama coalition tried to get him reelected.
Right. And there's somebody, I wish I could mention the guy's name because he sucks so bad, and I want our listeners to go after him, but it's like, woke is America, woke is life, woke is Jesus, woke is Christ, and woke is, and I responded to him going, it's amazing when people with and I'm stealing your words. These aren't my words. These are Russ's words. A kindergarten level knowledge of scripture and religion actually purports to know anything about anything. And you and I've talked about this a lot. And you know my views, and I'm loud and proud about my views. The fact that there's people like that, and you know, the woke curve is definitely going down on the Sigma 4 and 5 side now of things. It's kind of come and gone, just like the trust all women and all of that stuff is kind of crested and is starting to abate because people are starting to get their lives back together and be sane. But there's people still out there like that, which is insane to me. And there's mouthpieces and spoke people and people that still believe this shit, that this is the right way to do things. And I have a go ahead. I'll let you talk. And I have a very important thing that I've been thinking about lately based on my biology and medical background. But go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's just, I think what's going on is, yeah, a lot of the wokesters still exist now. A lot of society went along with it for two reasons. Number one, it became a join the cool crowd movement. A lot of people kind of are sheep, went along with it just because. But it's similar to when you get punched in the mouth. You're shocked at first, so it takes a few minutes to actually form a response and get your wits back. So when the woke movement hit us out of nowhere, it kind of stunned people into compliance. And as time has gone on, people have realized that no, we're not going to play these games anymore. We're not canceling people. We're not automatically accepting the race card. Your standards it's not about virtue, it's about control. And so people have had enough. They're not playing the game anymore. And that's how you take away these people's power. It requires courageous people at first, and then it'll grow into more of a movement to stand up and say, no, we're not going to play these dumbass games just because you want to control people's lives. We're not going. It's gone from tolerance to celebration to obedience really fast, and I think that's where people have finally said, whoa, all right, I don't want to play this anymore.
I totally agree with you. And this is let me circle back around to something. And I'm on the computer here for people that are on the YouTube.
It's lit up. You can't see it because you're not on YouTube. It's lit up Coop's face really nicely.
What's that?
I was telling our audience that if you can't see it because you're not on YouTube, the computer screen Coop is on has lit up Coop's face and shining brightly right now.
Oh, you know what? I'm not even looking. What's going on here? Let me smack back over. I do look really good. I do look really good. I look a little bit like
white glowing look, almost like the angel. One of the angels guarding the pearly gates is coming out of his face.
I kind of look like a less retarded Fetterman right now.
Fetterman's actually surprised me. I still don't think he should be in the Senate, but
yeah, he's been
a pleasant surprise on some things.
He's still a Biden guy though, so fuck him.
Yeah, but he's done better than I thought he would, especially given how he started.
Right. Hey guys.
It's again, it's helped that my expectations were not high to begin with. It's kind of like when I watched the movie, the Flash movie with Ezra Miller. I enjoyed it because I went in, my expectations were so low. As long as it was marginally okay, I could, it exceeded those expectations and I could enjoy it.
Did you actually finally end up watching that?
The Flash?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I watched it a couple of months ago. I enjoyed it because I went in with such low expectations.
I enjoyed it because of like all the other stuff around it, like Michael what's his face, and being Batman again and all that kind of thing.
Michael Keaton, yeah.
Michael Keaton, and yeah, there's some cool ancillary stuff around it.
Well, the fact that they didn't make Supergirl the girl boss that's going to beat everybody and save the day just because she got pulled out of prison.
Yeah, I kind of like that gal that played the Supergirl, though.
She did decent.
I liked her. I actually really liked her. Not your typical blonde, beautiful, la la la, but she was kind of a hard ass, almost looked Latina kind of esque, kind of a badass. I kind of liked her.
She wasn't invulnerable. She actually had weaknesses that the bad guys could exploit.
Yeah, no, I liked her. And then I think they seamlessly put the stuff in from the prior Superman movie in there with Zod and all of that. I thought that was actually done quite well. That part was.
Like I said, I enjoyed it, even if Ezra Miller's a complete Fruit Loop.
He is a Fruit Loop. He is a Fruit Loop. I like him though as an actor, probably partly because he's a Fruit Loop. He can pull it off. But anyway, so what I wanted to get back to pull full circle is I don't. You said you didn't hear about this, but the gunshot technology. So there's a defense firm that has a gunshot technology that basically you can put up speakers all over your whatever, and it can help the cops figure out where gunshots are coming from whatever municipality. Chicago had been using this, and the Chicago mayor said it's racist.
The Chicago mayor is a moron, but while
I just want to let that sit and marinate with people that a gunshot technology telling you where a gunshot is coming from is racist. So what's not racist is allowing black people to kill each other in record numbers, because that's what happens in Chicago. Let's just be blunt, because I'm tired of pulling punches. What happens in Chicago is black people killing black people in record numbers. It's not black people killing white people in record numbers, although if you look at those numbers, the based on population, the number of white people that get killed by black people versus the other way around is exponentially higher. But let's just focus on this. It's racist to target neighborhoods where there's a lot of gunshots, according to the Chicago,
and where a lot of black people are dying. I would think
where a lot of black people are dying, and mostly young people, by the way.
What's that?
Mostly young black people, by the way.
Yeah, I would think it would be, less racist to try and save black lives in those neighborhoods, but maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about. The mayor of Chicago is a moron, and I could talk about his stupidity all day, but
yeah, Brandon Johnson replaced that Lightfoot woman and he's even worse.
But what that is to me, that's an indictment of the Chicago electorate. If they're willing to put somebody that dumb in office, you know what? You deserve what you get. You voted for this shit. All right, this is on you now, because you saw how bad Lori Lightfoot was. I don't remember the guy that Johnson was running against, but he was actually marginally okay. He had an anti-crime platform, and they went and voted Johnson in anyway. And so at that point, I'm like, all right, you're on your own. You deserve everything that happened in the city of Chicago because you were too stupid to turn out the idiots.
Yeah, and it's kind of the way I feel about Palestine when people, when these uneducated idiots talk about free Palestine, and well, Palestine's not a country, by the way. It's never existed as a country. It's never existed as anything other than a political movement. But free them. They're the ones who voted in Hamas to be their stewards, and so it's kind of the way I feel about that. Is that? I mean, do I totally feel emotionally, completely feel that way? No, because I'm a Christian and I hate that. But at some part of people get the wrong idea about Christian ethos, just like this asshole who said, "Oh, well, Jesus would never want that." Here's the thing: Jesus held everybody accountable for their actions. And I'm not trying to get religious here, but I'm just saying repentance carries a lot of things. It's admitting you're wrong, making up for your wrong, and accept responsibility for your wrong. Accepting responsibility, like, if somebody says, "Oh my God, I didn't mean to murder that guy." Okay, God bless you. But you're still going to go to prison probably for the rest of your life, because it's what accepting responsibility is about. There's a really important part of responsibility that seems to be lacking with people from the left here.
Well, they also they confuse Jesus and his love for mankind with hippie Jesus just letting you do whatever you want. They'll tell me that, well, Jesus hung out with prostitutes and thieves. Yeah, he didn't do it because he thought they were swell people. He did it to try to turn people away from sin.
Right.
The reason
right.
he went to where the sinners were.
Right.
The parable of the lost sheep is all about, he doesn't need to hang out with the people that are already saved because they're already in line. Let's go find the people that are lost and bring them back in line. Not say, "Hey, by the way, continue to stay lost. Love you, man." That's not the way it works.
No, it doesn't work that way. And it just it's insane to me that Mayor Johnson there in Chicago would find any way to. So what I thought was interesting, all this is the company that provides the technology for this, which is if you use it, it's fantastic technology. The military uses a very similar technology, by the way. And the same company actually supplies the Department of Defense. Mayor Johnson said, "Well, we'll give you another 6 months before we go." And then that company said, "No, go fuck yourself. We're going to pull all of our technology and all of that," which makes me hope that a whole bunch of communities start using that technology, because it's an amazing piece of technology. It gives you an idea about how to assess where your threats are coming from. You and I might know something about threat assessment. I don't know, maybe just a little bit. Maybe that's what we did for a living. Another thing I wanted to bring up with you was, did you hear what's going on with my girl up in Washington State, who used to be the head of the NAACP over in Spokane, Rachel Dolezal?
Oh yes, I read about this. I couldn't believe even that people would pay for that.
Oh,
and the fact
so
that
me.
Go ahead, Coop. You explain it.
You know me. I had to go look. You know me. I had to go.
Oh God, really?
Oh, good Lord.
I
Look,
read about what you did, and I'm like, no, thank you. I don't want to barf.
I like me a full-figured woman. I do. I have no problem with that. And I am a Christian man, but I tend to, I don't know, not be a judgy guy when it comes to certain things. Okay. Wow. Like, it was like throwing a bunch of goddamn, I don't even know what to say. So I looked. So Rachel Dolezal, who pretended she was black for her own purposes.
Did you take tanning pills or spray tans or something?
Yes. Yeah, she did all the above, as far as I remember. Who pretended she had African American heritage so she could reap the benefits of that. Was head of the NAACP in the Spokane, Washington chapter. And Spokane's near and dear to my heart because I went to Gonzaga University. So I lived there for 4 years of my life, off and on. And so she lied about that, lied about her heritage. And then she can't make any money. So she accepted a job as a grade school teacher.
Yeah, an elementary school teacher.
But on the side, she had an OnlyFans page, which, oh my God, I looked and it was like, holy shit. It was like pumpernickel bread sandwiches all shoved together with some pastrami, if you know what I mean. She's disgusting. She's actually, like I said, I got no problem with a full-figured woman. Her skeleton would make a full-figured woman envy. Let me just put it to you that way.
First of all, just so you know, I've heard that the butter they put on the popcorn at the movies, that's actually the sweat that comes out of her vagina. But yeah, for those who don't know, go look at a picture of Rachel
God, she's so disgusting.
Before and after. She took a whole bunch of tanning pills and spray tans, and then they showed the before picture that her parents gave. She's blonde and like white. When I say white, I'm talking like lily white, like as white as Coop at least, if not more so.
Well, there's nobody whiter than me, but yeah, no, pretty white.
And then she goes and I thought, okay, maybe she was turning her life around. She was going to go be an elementary school teacher, try to put this stuff behind her. Everybody makes mistakes. Some people make big mistakes, but she's trying to move on. And then while she's teaching grade school kids, she decided to get the OnlyFans account. One of the things I read was that she was, and believe me, unlike Coop, I don't have the courage to go look at this thing.
Go for it. Do it right now. Come on.
I read that she was like, one of her things was masturbating underneath the Christmas tree.
I don't remember seeing. I glanced. I'm telling you, I didn't spend a lot of time, but I just wanted to confirm. You know me, Russ. I'm out there in front. I want to do my dirty work for the Two Grumpy Bastards podcast, so I felt like it was my mandate to go out there and do the research.
Your duty to go out and look at the OnlyFans. Yeah, it's look, guys, I don't know it. There's, first of all, I don't get the appeal behind OnlyFans because I mean, have you been on the internet? There's like free porn everywhere. And most of it is, most women are like a lot more attractive than Rachel Dolezal.
Oh my God, yeah. I forgot how unattractive she was, actually.
I don't know why you would pay for something like that from someone who looks like that. I don't get it. Maybe it's a fetish thing. I don't know. But yeah.
Well, anyway, I God bless her. I'll just say that. I'll say that in my faith. God bless her. We'll pray for her. Sorry she's having such a hard time in her life where she feels like this is the necessary thing she needs to do.
She did get fired from teaching kids, thankfully.
Yeah, she did get fired, which is actually amazing. I'm surprised.
I'm stunned by that. Yeah.
I'm surprised that the Washington State Education Association allowed her to get fired because it's
I thought she was teaching in Arizona or something.
probably I have a lot of ex friends that are teachers, so I don't pull any punches when it comes to how I feel about that state of that particular occupation these days. But I think you're right. I think it was in Arizona. I'm sure it's just as bad there as it is up here in Washington as far as protecting really bad teachers. And
Maybe
I just had I had this conversation yesterday. It's kind of funny in a store. I don't know why it popped up randomly, but like I'll say again, if you work for the government, you should not be allowed to be in a union. Period. Over. Have a nice day. Period.
You're bargaining against the taxpayers.
You're bargaining against taxpayers, and you and I both have had GS employees, and firing them is very, 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 very difficult. You're talking about people being at the defense department level, and it's fucking ridiculous.
It's almost impossible to fire a GS.
I have done it on several occasions. I have a method. Maybe I should write a book.
You probably should, because there's an art to it.
There is, and most of it comes down to documentation, and it takes a
Most
while.
folks don't do that.
I've been highly successful at that. I am 5 for 5 getting people fired from their jobs as GS employees who deserved it. Anyway, so what else? Those are kind of my random hits for the week. What's going on in your world?
Well, let's see. There's been a couple other things. I mean, we could talk about the Super Bowl if you wanted to. Just real quick on that, I think it's amusing that some folks are coming down on Brock Purdy or Kyle Shanahan and talk about wanting to replace large parts of the 49ers. And I'm like, dude, they took the Kansas City Chiefs to overtime. If they had gotten in the end zone, they get to the 4-yard line. So, maybe we just don't overreact on that. I was not a big fan of either team. I think it's funny that a lot of people are like, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are going to get married. I don't know if you saw this. Did you see the thing about how Travis Kelce yelled at Andy Reid on the sidelines?
I did. I saw that whole thing. Yep.
A relationship coach came out and said that that's dangerous for Taylor Swift, which I found hysterical.
You know what? I don't think it is a big deal. I think it happens all the time in relationships between leaders.
Football. That's what happens in football.
Yeah, it happens. Do you think I haven't had a subordinate get in my face a time or two? And I could have sent them to the fucking showers and all that kind of thing, but I knew where it was coming from. So then you deal with it afterward, and it's like, I'm sorry, sir, I was out of line and la. Yeah, you were, but it happened. So let's just we're brothers. Let's move on. That kind of thing.
So anyway, there was that. Some folks tried to get on me about, well, you said you'd never watch the NFL again. The Super Bowl is an exception. I didn't watch much of the regular season. Super Bowl is an exception because it's an event. So I did watch that. And then a bunch of other stuff. The case against Trump in Georgia is falling apart, mostly because you can tell if someone is principled or a partisan hack based on if they're defending Fani Willis. I mean, she used government taxpayer money to pay for a cruise and a whole bunch of other stuff for her lover that she then put in charge of this case. Who the dude is got very scant prosecutorial experience. If I was on the left, instead of defending her, I think I might come out as pissed against her because she's put their dream, their wet dream case in pretty big jeopardy by doing what she did. And so I don't. It's a tribal instinct to just try and defend her, and it shows that there's no principle there. So there's that. There's the judge that hates Trump in New York that just fined him $384 million, I think, today.
Oh, I didn't see that. I didn't see. Of course, I was sleeping when you texted me and say, "Where the fuck are you?" So
yeah, this is you'd recognize this. This is the dude that looks like he's enjoying sitting in judgment over Trump. Look, if he broke a law or something, I get some fines. But I also read this weird document produced back in the 1780s, and one of the amendments to it says something about there shall not be excessive fines, and finding somebody $384 million seems excessive to me.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. It's not. Well, I mean, And I think I remember seeing in an article on a not what frickin' webpage was it? You know me, I like to troll the non-partisan web pages and stuff like that. Like the
Yeah.
average of something like that would be less than $3 million or something like that.
Yeah.
And this is exponential.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's politically motivated. And you bring up a point that I kind of wanted to talk about with this whole thing is the two-state system that's in place. It's not a conspiracy theory, ladies and gentlemen. The two-state system, it's alive and well. You, of course, know the DOJ came out and said we're not going to prosecute the president because he's too senile.
Yeah, but
to
he's too senile to be prosecuted, but he's competent enough to have the nuclear launch codes.
Right. That's part of the two-state system. There's the way Donald Trump, and you and I are both, I think you and I probably agree 98% on the fact that we would prefer Donald Trump not be the presidential nominee for the Republican Party, but the fact that he is, we will support him. And given that, the fact that everything that's going on with him right now is a left-wing political conspiracy to try to destroy him. It has nothing to do with justice. It has nothing to do with anything remotely resembling, politics as they should be. I've been looking a lot into voting and absentee balloting, and you and I feel the same way about that. The only way you should be able to vote early and vote often or absentee ballot is if you have a valid reason, if you're deployed in the military, if you're a truck driver, some things like that, exceptions. Otherwise,
yeah.
What's that?
You're gravely ill in a nursing home or something.
Gravely ill in a nursing home, whatever. So I think, and this won't get me many fans, but I'm for I'd even be for a if this was a science fiction movie and I was in charge, I would say that people get different levels of voting ability. Like if you're a military vet, you get a little bit more leeway, or maybe you get a little bit more voting power than some of the other people do that have never contributed to society or contributed taxes. I know that gets on the crazy thing. I have a whole theory about that. You can read my novel coming out about that. But meritocracy is very important to me. And as much as I disagree with Donald Trump about the election being stolen and the way he says it was stolen, I think that it definitely was influenced.
I think it was influenced by rules changes,
right?
All the early voting stuff with COVID, by changing. It was designed to get the lazy voter who may not like Donald Trump but isn't usually motivated to go to the polls. It was designed to get votes out of those people.
It was, and there's no other explanation for what's going on at the border other than to ensure a supermajority of Democrats. There's no other explanation for it, because any reasonable person can't look at what's going on at the southern border and say, oh, that's okay, that's cool, that's great. There's no reasonable person that can do that. And if you defend that, then there's something incredibly wrong with you. There's something incredibly wrong with you, as in you don't like the country as defined by the Constitution or defined by the way it's been for the last 240 years. There's something seriously wrong with you.
Yeah.
The only reason for that is to create a supermajority of Democrats. And like I said, when I see these idiots on Twitter say, vote Democrat, get every Republican out there, it's like, then who's going to do anything? You're just going to sit around just like pushing each other's shit in each other's butts with your dicks. That's all you're going to accomplish.
Would you trust Democrats if they had a supermajority, what they might do to folks who didn't agree with them?
No, I mean, of course not.
I wouldn't.
Of course not. You and I be in prison right now because of this podcast.
Yeah. Well, look, it's not just that I think they want to get a whole bunch of illegal immigrants in here, eventually get an amnesty or get them married to American citizens so they can get sponsored and get a green card and eventually vote. You also got to remember, importing a whole bunch of these folks into some of these states, illegal immigrants are counted in the census, folks. The census is not confined to just citizens. I think it should be. I don't think you should count people who are non-citizens in the count. But why do you think California has so many more electoral votes? It's not just because a whole bunch of folks want to live there, but they're absorbing illegal aliens and illegal immigrants, and they get counted for purposes of representation, whether they vote or not. And oh, by the way, San Francisco just put its first non-citizen on its board of elections. A Chinese immigrant from Hong
Right.
Kong is now on the San Francisco Board of Elections. A couple of years ago, we'd have been called crazy for even suggesting that that's what they wanted to do. It's very obvious they want to do that. They want to ensconce a permanent majority, and it's going to lead to some very bad things. What keeps a republic together is the perception that it's fair, that we'll all abide by things that don't go our way because we have a voice in fixing them sometime down the road. You take that voice away, the bad things are going to happen. I'm sorry. That's whether it happens now or in 25 years, I don't know, but bad things will happen.
Well, you're 100% right, and that's anytime I see somebody that actually wants to argue for against the way we currently run elections, and go towards a complete democracy. What people don't realize is democracies always end up in tyrannies. They always end up in tyrannies. There's a reason that the founding fathers believed in an electoral college for this country, to avoid a tyranny, because we've mentioned on this podcast many times, but if the majority of Americans vote that Russ and Coop get their ass kicked every time they go to AM PM to fill up their car or anytime they're in public, then that's perfectly legal for us to get beat every time we go in public. Perfectly legal. Perfectly legal. You know, would it pass the muster of the Supreme Court? Well, I mean, it would take a long time to get there, and we'd get our ass beaten a lot by well, you and I wouldn't, because it'd be a bunch of leftists and they can't fucking fight.
Slap fighting.
It'd be like getting hit in the face with wet tissue paper. But my point is valid. A true democracy leads to tyranny. It always does. That's why it
evolved into tyranny. From Greece to Rome, a whole bunch of stuff. It turns into tyranny eventually, either because you get the tyranny of the majority, or it gets so bad somebody comes in, takes over, and they turn it into an actual autocracy.
Right. Not to interrupt this flow, but I got to tell you, I'm pissed. This chair that I've had, my office chair, I've been spending so many hours in front of the computer lately, typing papers for my third master's program. My third master's.
Yeah. If you don't catch that, folks, Coop wants you to know that he's really smart.
I'm really smart.
Even though a lot of our listeners have claimed that I'm smarter than he is.
They have, but it's not true. So anyway,
if nothing else, folks, that's one of the things that will get Coop's goat really bad.
You're right about that. But so the piston in my latest office chair has failed, just like my last three. And so, like, I'm sitting down at a level that I'm not used to sitting. Like, my legs are like 90 degrees from my hips right now, which I'm used to sitting.
What does that say about your
yes.
head in these chairs?
Yes. I'll just say yes. So I'm not sure if I should. You can replace the pistons on these things. It's a little bit of work. You can do it. You need a monkey wrench. Am I allowed to say monkey wrench? Is that racist? Plumber's wrench, the big ones, or whatever and all that. But or should I just buy a new chair? I'm not sure. Yeah, it's not even holding even a few seconds anymore. I just got up and fixed it. I could actually see my head go. Sucks. Funny. It sucks. Yeah, and I don't like being low to the ground like this. It makes me feel like I'm back in my 67 Mustang in high school. Anyway, so moving right along. No, it's interesting to me. I've been watching a lot of the leftist propaganda lately because of the stuff that's coming out about Joe Biden being senile and who's going to replace him and a lot of these other things. I do have a thought about that. I was wondering what you think about this. If Joe Biden was to resign the presidency prior to the convention, the Democratic convention that's going to take place in July, there wouldn't really be a huge issue, right? I mean, they could easily replace him and get all the delegates to say, go with Gavin Newsom. They're not going to, everybody hates, even my most leftist stringent friends, I shouldn't even say friends, acquaintances, hate the vice president. They think she's cookie crumbs. And I'm like, well, they both are the worst people that have ever lived on planet Earth. So I don't know how you make Michelle Obama is not interested. All that scuttlebutt about Michelle Obama, it's not going to happen. She's not going to. But I do think they have Gavin Newsom waiting in the wings. I don't see the big issue. Everybody's like, well, they can't do it. It can't possibly happen. All you have to do is go to the convention and have people vote for Gavin Newsom, right?
Well, okay, so a few thoughts here. First of all, I think the replacement, somebody out other than Kamala might work if Joe Biden is still alive and still president. He just decides not to run. If something, God forbid,
if he resigns for medical reasons,
no. If
you don't think that could happen?
Yeah, God forbid, I don't want anything to happen to the president. That'd be awful. But if something happened to him or he resigned for medical reasons, if Kamala Harris move on to somebody else aside from maybe Michelle Obama, without completely fracturing the coalition, they're not going to be able to replace a minority woman with a white man, with a white heterosexual male at the top of the ticket. It just won't happen.
Why not? Why not? Gavin Newsom? I mean, are you kidding?
No, because
Gavin Newsom
completely fracture the coalition. Because remember, it's held together with spit and baling wire right now. They don't need, they need every single minority vote they can get. And if it don't take all of the minority vote to leave. If 20% of the minority vote gets pissed because they replace Kamala Harris, then they can't win the election. I would issue a word of caution regarding Michelle Obama. I do believe that she doesn't necessarily want it because it would be, she likes her private life. She likes being at Martha's Vineyard. I wouldn't completely take it off the table because, I don't want Republicans.
She likes pegging Barack. Oops.
I don't want Republicans or conservatives to get caught off guard in the event it does happen, because here's what could happen. I think one of the biggest things Michelle Obama doesn't want is she doesn't want to campaign for the job. But if they went to her at the convention and said, we'll declare you the candidate by acclamation and you're not going to have a single rally and we're not going to debate Donald Trump anyway, she might be interested in that. Again, I only put the odds at like 20 to 25% at most, but I wouldn't completely write it off. Now, regarding who else they could replace Joe Biden with, Gavin Newsom he's toxic everywhere outside of California. He's even kind of toxic in California, but he's completely toxic outside of California. What are they going to do? Go to Mayor Pete? They're not going to. Mayor Pete has proved that he took a 2-month leave of absence from his job and results improved when he wasn't there. So he's not viable.
Hey, Russ, though, he's gay, so that qualifies.
Yes, we get reminded at every opportunity.
He is very, 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 very gay. So
he's president. I'm sorry, he's the Secretary of Transportation because he and his partner like choo-choo trains.
Because he's very, 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 very gay. That's how he got the job.
As he said in his confirmation, he likes trains. That was a romantic thing for him and his partner. So that qualifies him to be the Secretary of Transportation.
I actually have a semi ex-friend from high school who thinks Pete Buttigieg is a genius. She supports him 100%. And that's why
don't let her near a voting booth because
that's that's why we're ex-friends. You'd be surprised how many of my friends from a little logging town in the middle of nowhere in Washington State went far left, and it would astound you. It would astound you. Anyway,
I don't know who else they have.
He's very gay. He's very gay. I'll just say
the Republicans and the Democrats have an inverse problem with each other. Democrats, the only reason Joe Biden was elected president was because, like it or not, he comes off as a non-threatening grandpa. Now, you and I don't agree with that. I understand. But to most people on TV, they don't see somebody who's threatening. That's how he was able to get in. But they have no candidate besides Joe Biden that comes off that way. On the Republican side, Donald Trump comes off as threatening and a blowhard and a loudmouth. But they have all these other folks, from Ron DeSantis to Glenn Youngkin to Winston Sears to Kristi Noem, that are smart and capable enough to run the country, but can't get in because
hold on a sec. You said Kristi Noem. Let me just have a moment.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
For those who don't know, Christy Noem she's a very attractive governor.
All right.
She makes Sarah Palin look ugly.
You keep talking. All right, go ahead.
All right, she makes Sarah Palin look ugly. But anyway, there are a bevy of
She really
competent,
does.
qualified folks on the Republican side who can't get there because Donald Trump is sucking all the oxygen out of the room. So the Democrats are running the only person they have that can win, and Republicans are running the only person who maybe can't win. Now, I'm not saying he can't. I still, and you and I may disagree on this, I still only put Donald Trump's odds at 40%. Because I don't think people understand, I don't think people on the Republican side understand just how many folks hate him. The whole election in 2024 is going to come down to whether or not people hate Trump enough to come out and vote against him. Or has Joe Biden soured them so much that they stay home and just don't vote? Because the turnout for this election, since the rules have gone back mostly the way they were, it's not going to be like it was in 2020. You're probably going to see a dip of 15 to 20 million votes. Anyway, I think we had like 160 million people vote in the last election, somewhere around that. It's not going to be that way. It's going to be 140 to 145 million. That's even with population growth that has occurred. So it really is going to depend on how many folks come out. I think that he's going to take Arizona and Georgia. But one of the things Republicans need to remember, don't get suckered by the illusions, because they've been suckered by the illusions the last 5 elections. 2018, when they lost the House and the Senate. I'm sorry, when they lost the House. They kept the Senate because it was a bad year on the map for Democrats. They lost in 2020. They lost the Georgia runoff in 2021. The 2022 wave turned into a 2022 red mist. And then we just lost, the Republicans just lost the House seat on Long Island when they kicked George Santos out of the House. And it went to Tom Suozzi, I think is his name. So, Trump's the supposed Trump magic that we hear about, it does not exist. Okay. Now, look, one of the other things that Republicans do is they did have some principles, maybe not many, but they had enough to kick out a charlatan like George Santos. But they're going to stop doing that because Democrats are not willing to reciprocate and kick out some of their shittier people like Ilhan Omar, or in the Senate, Bob Menendez. So
my favorite guy, Mr. Schiff there in California, guys like that who have clearly broken the law.
Yeah, so Republicans are going to eventually say, well, all this is doing is costing us power. Why should we maintain our principles if it gets us kicked in the teeth? And they're going to keep the Santoses and those folks in Congress because they don't want to lose the seat. It might have been different if Republicans had won that seat, but they lost it. And again, it's the Trump magic is not evident. The reason that the Republicans took Congress in 2022 was because of Florida and because of Lee Zeldin in New York. It had nothing to do with Trump. It was because of Lee Zeldin and Ron DeSantis. And that's how they won the Congress.
There's a strong argument to be made that we would have taken Senate if not for Trump because of his.
Because they wouldn't have run Dr. Oz, they wouldn't have run Terry Lake, they wouldn't have run Herschel Walker.
Right. Yeah, and just bad candidates. And of course he's like, don't absentee ballot. You don't want to absentee ballot. Don't do it. And it's just there is no Trump magic. Trump, matter of fact, is the antithesis of I honestly I think my coonhound's yelling at me. I'll let you go on. I'll get your opinion on this, and I'll go let him in. But I think the antithesis is true, that there is no Trump magic. If there was anybody else, a Ron DeSantis or some of the other candidates that you talked about that were the feature of the Republican Party now, it would be different. It would be a lot different.
It would be a lot different. And let me correct myself real quick. Terry Lake wasn't running for Senate. She was running for governor. It was Blake Masters.
I knew what you meant. I'll be right back.
Blake Masters, Don Baldock, these kinds of folks that Trump propped up, that lost elections that Republicans should have won fairly easily and been in control of the Senate, and they're not. Now, it's kind of amusing that because Democrats are caught up in their own level of purity tests, they've kicked Kirsten Sinema to the curb, but she's running as an independent against Representative Gallegos, who wants her seat on the Democrat side, and they may split the vote enough to where Carrie Lake, the failed gubernatorial candidate out of Arizona, may just squeak by with enough votes to get in the Senate. I mean, I'm not a big Carrie Lake fan, but if she managed to get in because the Democrats split themselves, I think that would be hysterical. I think the Republicans are going to take the Senate seats in Ohio, Montana. They're definitely going to take the one in West Virginia. There is an outside shot. I don't know if it's really going to happen because it's a presidential election year and that drives turnout on the Democrat side. But there's an outside shot that could take the Senate seat in Maryland because the former governor, who was very popular there, a guy named Larry Hogan, has decided to announce a bid for Senate in Maryland, which should not even be close to being in play. It might be, though. We'll see. But Trump does not have coattails. I mean, shoot, look at 2020 where Trump lost the election, but Republicans gained in the House. That never happens. If you lose the presidential election, you almost always lose seats in Congress. I cannot recall an election where the Republicans lost the presidency but gained seats in Congress. It just does not happen. It's usually the exact reverse. So his magic is not there. It doesn't exist. But folks are going to prop him up. If he loses this time, God only knows. I would not be surprised if he wanted to run again in 2028. We'll see if the Republicans were suckers enough to do it then. Hopefully they would have learned their lesson. He could still win. I still put it at 40%, but only because Joe Biden is, my God, the most incompetent president of my lifetime. I know one of these days I wanted to talk about best presidents and worst presidents, and Joe Biden definitely ranks in the bottom 10 all time. He's not bottom all time. He's not the last guy. There's several I can think of that are worse than he is, from Woodrow Wilson to James Buchanan. But he's going to end up being in the bottom tier. It's a matter of how do you hang with his policies, which are horrendous. The fact that he cannot remember. He claimed to have been talking to Francois Mitterrand in 2021. The guy died in 1997. He claimed he was talking to Helmut Kohl during his term. Helmut Kohl died in like 2015 or 16. He doesn't even remember who he's been talking to. And the point you were making about him being charged, to me, that takes all the air out of the charge in Florida. The classified documents charge in Florida is the only one, in my opinion, that holds weight. And if they're going to let Hillary Clinton off, and now they're letting Joe Biden off, I don't see how it holds up. I don't see a jury in Florida convicting Trump of the classified documents thing because they're going to say, well, why didn't you charge Biden? You can't use the excuse that he's not mentally fit, or that he gave. The one I like is people saying, well, he gave the documents back quickly. Look, you've dealt with classification law. I've dealt with classification law. Intent and whether you give the documents back quickly is not part of the law. The law is, did you mishandle classified information? And if you did, that's a violation of the law, period. And the only reason the DOJ didn't go after him was because they're on his side.
Yeah. Let me enlighten our listeners about what classification, how strict that is. In one of my very last jobs in the United States Army, I was the chief of basically current operations for a division, an Army division, which meant that I had I had two NCOs that guarded a vault. And what do you call the? I can't remember the tech
Skiff?
vault. What's that?
If you talk about the skiff,
Maybe it's where you had to go through 3 doors to get to the classified computer, and I had two NCOs. They were both MPs, and
I think that's the skiff.
yeah, and they monitor it 24/7 back somewhere in the Mideast or Midwest at some security vault. And if anything went hooey or anything like that, or if it was open later than it's supposed to be, then they would call you immediately and blah, 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 blah. Those NCOs had firearms on their side, which were in condition 1, sitting outside that. Now, was it overkill? Yes. I mean, nothing ever happened there, but there was a guy who was the deployment officer. I'll keep this all on the very simple level.
Let's keep it nipper.
Yeah, exactly. Sipper, nipper, but it was a sipper net. So you understand where I'm coming from on this. It's you have a completely, for folks that don't know, you have a completely unique feed that comes in. It's not the internet. It's a POTS system. It's a completely different feed.
You cannot get on the SIPRnet system without physically transferring the information. That SIPR and the internet are not connected.
They're not even close to connected. They're a completely different thing, and they're physically separated. So you have a feed that comes into your building that's we call it the pot system. It's a completely separate thing. Anyway, so there was a guy who was our mobility officer who was in track of all of the units that were deploying back and forth, the names and all that kind of thing. That's all classified information. He was amazing in his job. He was a great fucking guy. Personal friend of mine. I still love the guy to this very day. One day, he just had a little bit of a moment, and he left a file on top of the safe that you store all these things. And not only do you have to go through 3 levels of security in there, once you're in there, there's a safe where all the files are, where all the hard copies are kept. He left a file on top of the safe through 3 levels of security. That was a classified file, and he walked out. He just left it on top. He almost he almost lost his. He was a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. He almost lost his job over that. For a very human error that any one of us could have committed a million times. And did it harm anybody? Did anything happen? No. And was it any big deal? And I was one of the ones that wrote a memo saying, "Fuck off, leave this guy alone. He's awesome." That's not what my memo said, but that was the intent of it. That was my job. That was my job. And my NCO's job. It was one of my jobs. I oversaw the NCOs, the MPs that sat in front of that with the armed guys that did other things too, but they sat in front of that vault. That's how serious it is. A guy who had been in the Army for 25 years, who was a lieutenant colonel, who made a very simple, stupid mistake that didn't harm anybody, almost lost his job, and could have been charged under UCMJ, by the way. Could have been making furniture at Leavenworth for that simple mistake. That's how serious that shit is at the level that I used to work. So anybody that thinks, "Oh, it's no big deal," it's a fucking big deal. And look, I think it's a big deal what Donald Trump did. I think it's a big deal. I do.
The rules have to apply consistently.
The rules have to apply consistently. If it was only Donald Trump who's ever done this as a president, then I would have a different demeanor towards this. But Hillary Clinton should be in jail for what she did. Absolutely. Not only did Hillary Clinton do that, she was complicit in destroying evidence after the fact.
Yep.
Okay. That's really different than what Biden and Trump did. Frankly, of the 3, Hillary Clinton is the one who's most complicit in committing a federal crime, erasing hard drives and doing all that kind of thing. She was trying to, that's just the Clinton way though. Hookers die, you bury them in the swamp in Georgia. It happens. That's just the Clinton.
Careful, they're gonna suicide you.
Yeah. That's the Clinton way. But for people that don't think it's actually kind of a serious deal, it's actually a really serious deal. And I, like I said, I never had an issue. Back in my day, I had a TSSI. I had all that. I was in control of a vault that held, mobility, deployment secrets and all that kind of. It's not secrets, but a lot of other stuff. Yeah, I was in charge of that. And to come into my office to talk to me, you had to have a certain level of clearance to even come in my office. Was it strictly enforced? It was like, "Oh yeah, what's your no." But we were common sense about it. But to go into that vault, you're goddamn right. You had to go through all the proper procedures and all that kind of thing. I was able to kick out a full bird colonel out of the office who was trying to harass one of my E6s over there by saying, "Hey sir, I don't think you have the proper clearance to be talking to my NCOs that way. Why don't you fucking beat some sand with your feet the fuck out of my office?" Because he was a dick. That felt good. But it's actually a very serious thing. And what came out a couple of days ago, Russ, about this whole thing is, he was all indignant about, "How dare they ask me about my son? And how dare they ask?" Well, they didn't ask you, bro. You're the one who brought it up. You're the one who brought up, and you know what? I am not going to make fun of the president about his son dying of brain cancer. It's tragic. I'm really sorry his family went through that. I'm sorry your other son is a fucking complete and utter cumball piece of shit of a human being, and that must be really tough to deal with as parents. It must be. You have my sympathy. You really do. You have my prayers and sympathy for that. But fuck you for lying. Fuck you for lying about all of this. That's where I'm at. I don't think Joe Biden is a doddering old fool, as a lot of these people talk about. I think he hates America. Fundamentally, despises the principles on which this country are founded, and he's acted that way ever since he's been in public service, in my opinion, Russ.
Well, look, I am going to take one issue with the way he portrays Bo. But when Bo died of brain cancer, that was horrible. Bo did not die in Iraq. And he keeps telling the families of fallen service members that his son died in Iraq. That is a disservice, and it dishonors memory of everybody who died in combat because it gives a false impression, and he knows the impression he is giving when he says that. All right, it's tragic enough. Stop making shit up because it makes people not respect you. Now, I don't know how much we're talking about hate America. I think we may slightly disagree there, but I think that he is incompetent, and I think he is mentally not stable. I don't think he's mentally there anymore. I mean, if you notice how quickly after that report came out, Kamala Harris said, "Yep, I'm ready to step up." I mean, Biden better be careful, walking near Kamala. She may, Lord only knows what she'll do, because the only way she ever becomes president is, he ends up not making it through his term somehow. That's the only way she's ever going to be president, because she's never going to get elected to it. If she gets the nomination somehow, Donald Trump's going to win in the cakewalk, which I never thought I would say. But look, we live in the stupidest times. We live in a place where we got, two of the worst candidates we've ever had. We haven't had any sense of normalcy in quite some time, and I don't know how we get back there. It depresses me. Makes me wonder a year from now what the country's going to look like, regardless of who wins. I have no idea. I think it's going to be perilous, regardless of which party wins. And anyway, I don't know. So,
and to kind of finish this podcast out, it kind of brings me to a point I've been wanting to talk to you about. The good and bad, the upside and downside of conservatism. Conservatism is, conservatism is an interesting dichotomy in that it preaches individuality and all that, but it also preaches community and family and all of that kind of thing. The difference where the Democrats have the Republicans beat 6 ways to Sunday is I would say homogeneity. Is that
homogeneity?
Yeah, they really are aligned.
Together.
They stick together. Where Republicans were fractured in all these, well, I say we, I'm not a Republican, but
I know what you mean, though.
Conservatives are fractured in all these different areas, and that we vote with our ethics, we vote with our faith, we vote with a lot of different types of things where most Democrats I know will never vote for Republican no matter what. Yeah. It's to the point where it's a cult. It's a religion to the Democrats, where conservatives tend to be, well, I want to pick and choose, and I just want to be left alone and stuff like that. And I think that's a huge strength with the Democrats that conservatives are going to have to figure out. And the problem with that, in my opinion, is that conservatives tend to be, I don't know, how should I say this, ethical. And that ethical
more ethical. I don't know if I can say completely ethical. But
no, of course not. I know a lot of people who wave the flag that are a bunch of fucking dick bunnies, but I'm not sticking up for everybody on the right by any stretch of the imagination. But there's an ethos that exists among the conservative folks that I don't think exists among the left anymore. When I was a kid, I wouldn't have said that. When I was young man, I wouldn't have said that. I thought that Democrats had an ethos as well. I think that is
started to fracture with Bill Clinton.
Yeah, and I think it's completely disappeared now, where it's like everything conservative bad, anything we do, who cares, good.
Yep.
And it comes down to being a man of faith. It's almost like, well, it's kind of the definition of good versus evil at this point, isn't it?
It's getting close, but I mean, yeah, they'll stick together. They'll be more homogenous with the way that they approach things. Republicans, tend to at least want to present even if it's not real, they want to present the veneer of ethical behavior and respectability, at least in some regards. I think that's going to go away since they don't see any reciprocity. That's one of the reasons why they nominated Donald Trump in the first place in 2016. So
Yeah, and I got to tell you, this Speaker of the House guy needs to go away. He just annoys me. He's like a youth pastor in a vacation Bible camp.
Yeah, but then who do you get? Because right now the majority is so slim that you can't hold together coalitions on this stuff. That's one of the things with the red mist of 2022. Republicans needed a 20-seat majority, and by having now they have a majority because if 3 seats flip, Democrats gain control. With having that kind of small majority, nothing happens. Nor should it. I'm gonna have to go here in a second. I got.
Yep, I know we're running out of time here. So
anyway, we want to wrap this up.
yeah, we'll wrap it up. Good conversation. I know we don't have a lot of great videos or anything like that. It's just more of a off the cuff kind of wrap. But thank you, Russ, for your time. My love to your family as always. Huckleberry's in here playing with his babies and wanting a treat.
That's Huckleberry.
That's right. He wants a treat. He's looking at me like, what the fuck, Dad? It's time. All right, brother. For all you out there in podcast land, God bless you. And remember to keep your focus and
stay wokeless.